there's Puerto Ricans, I imagine, in this building, because, you know, we're out in New York City. I know you all moved down to Orlando for the most part and stuff. But they told me to, yeah, because I went to Spanish Harlem on 110th Street, you know, in Lexington, and there's like all these Mexican places, right, with taquerias and stuff. I said, really? Okay, no more Puerto Rican flags here. I mean, I remember when the Dominicans took over the bodegas, and now the Mexicans have taken over from the Dominicans. But that's that's the passage of immigrants. One group comes and does what the other group stops doing. Anyways, my point is this, I live in a district. But when I first got elected, I had an opponent, Juan Solis. Juan Solis era mexicanísimo. Yeah, he was. He had a big old hat, you know, like those Texas, like out of the cowboy movies, right? And he had the boots. He'd wear jeans a lot, right? He looked kind of like a cowboy, but everybody knew he was looking Mexican, right? And he was handsome and tall, bien mexicanísimo, right? Like luscious black hair and everything. And he'd tell everybody he was Mexican, right? I mean, 2 weeks before the election, back in March, Mr. President, you're going to like this. 2 weeks before the election, he opened up a campaign office in the middle of the Barrio in Chicago. I mean, where only Puerto Ricans live. That's where he opened up the office, right? He says, and he had a press conference, I'm going for everyone's vote. I may be Mexican, right? Reminding everybody he's Mexican. And I know that it's going to be hard for me to get Puerto Ricans, because Gutierrez is Puerto Rican, right? To vote for me, but in spite of that, I'm opening up this office as a measure of good faith. So when I'm the congressman, we're going to keep the office open. I accomplished a couple of things, tell everybody I'm Puerto Rican and he's Mexican. That night, the windows were blasted out of his camp. The next day he says, I tried. It's fair to apparent they don't want Mexicans out here in this Puerto Rican neighborhood. I mean, come on. That's how, so if you go back to the electoral results, in La Villita and in Pilsen, which is almost all Mexican, it was like 185 for him, 4 for me. Those are 4 people that made a mistake, right? And in the Barrio, it was 185 for me and 4 for him. Now, all joking aside, Latinos, if they're going to be a true power in this nation, they also have to work intra-party and intra-ethnicity and intra-nationality, right? So today, I'm the congressman of the 4th Congressional District. My district is about 75% Mexicano. 75% Mexican, those are the Latinos. It's about 15 to 20% Puerto Rican. And in the last election, I got 93% of the vote in La Villita, the most Mexican part of my congressional district. And we did that by helping people become citizens of the United States and standing up and defending their rights and demonstrating more than a campaign office through our actions each and every day what it is we defend. And there were a lot of Puerto Ricans that thought I was crazy. And they would go around complaining, why do you always talk about immigrants? Puerto Ricans are citizens of the United States. Why do you always talk about it? I said, because people need our help. Because my mom and my dad, they came to New York in 1952, and they had to listen to radio stations and read newspapers that said they were bringing tropical diseases. They said that they were criminals, that they came here to get on welfare. There were terrible, nasty things. They said they should all go back. The politicians were talking, how do we control these people? Let's stop them from coming here. That's what my parents came to. And you know something? Their son is going to stand up for people who are treated just like them today. That is the immigrants, which you hear about them each and every day. There is absolutely no difference. So, I mean, look at have you guys ever been out? Look, in America, our food is going to be picked, right, in foreign countries by foreign hands, or it's going to be picked in America by foreign hands. Either way, it's going to be picked by foreign hands. Let's just get over it. Nobody's at this university to go pick grapes or kneel all day in an onion field or pick garlic or pick lettuce or pick tomatoes. And anywhere you go in this country, who do you see doing that? You see immigrants doing that. You see immigrants from Mexico doing that. So the next time you go to the produce section of your supermarket or your local grocery store, think about who spent time doing the dirty, filthy, back-breaking work to put that food in that produce counter that goes on your dining room table. It's immigrants. And you know something? Instead of treating them shabbily as we do and passing SB 1070 and dividing their families up through deportations, we should say thank you. Thank you for making America. Because my kids, I didn't raise them and send them to college so that they could go and do that work in the fields. That's not what this is about. So, look, I read that story about the sugarcane cutters. I still remember them. And I see today as I go to the fields in Salinas or in Oregon or in Washington State or Mississippi or Georgia. You can go anywhere across this country. You go to meatpacking plants and you go to fields and you see migrant workers, you see Mexican mostly workers doing that kind of work. You know, we should celebrate what they do for this country. And we should invite them and we should give them decent working conditions. Because you know something? I don't want anything I don't want to eat. And it's like in Chicago. You go to Chicago? Come on, guys. You go to Chicago, open the door to the kitchen in a restaurant in Chicago, and there's an immigrant washing the dishes. You know it's true. And nobody gives two hoots when you're tired, and there's Maria. She just made your bed and your room. Do you care what her immigrant status is? No. You just want a nice, decent place to rest. And hopefully you leave her a few bucks when you wake up in the morning, because that's what the chocolate is for, in case you haven't come into reality. So my point is, look, my whole experience, that's why we wrote the memoir, to show you the arc, right, of where I began and where we're at today. Puerto Ricans may be citizens of the United States, but there is one expression that they know well and that they confront time and time again in this country. We hear it as Puerto Ricans all the time. Why don't you go back where you came from? Why don't you go back where you came from? And I write about that in the book. My daughter and I went to the capital of the United States. I was elected a member of Congress, and a security aide became so frustrated with us that she said to my daughters and me, why don't you go back where you came from? And if a person of Puerto Rican descent can rise to the Congress of the United States and still be told by a Capitol Hill security aide whose primary purpose is to maintain my safety, to tell me to go back where I came from, imagine what it is like in the rest of the world. And I hear people saying that all the time. Why don't you go back where you came from? Next question, I'm sorry.